Oh, hello. Are we? Yes, there's sound. Hi, everyone. Welcome, welcome. It's been a while. I haven't streamed in the last couple of weeks, I think. But hey, I'm back. I have a monstrosity next to me. I'll try to move the cam. Oh, yeah, of course, because it's all. Let me just remove that background. That should allow us to see how big those boxes are. So yeah, we're going to talk about chapters tonight. For those of you who have followed, the Montreal by Night game that we're having on Mondays, it is set basically in the past of chapters. So we're talking about less than a decade before the game. Of course, the events of Montreal by Night made it so that everything that happens in chapters is tangentially related. We have the same NPCs, it's the same city, but there's a lot of events that have occurred in the game on Mondays here that has altered like the it's called the starting state of the game. So we have a bunch of stuff. This is the first time I'm doing an unboxing type of video, so I might have to adjust a couple of things as we go along, mostly because, well, as you can see, my setup is not quite made for that. And I tried to play with it yesterday, but it was a bit of a problem. So, of course, this stream is absolutely not sponsored in any way, shape, or form by Flyos, even though I work for them. It's something that I just want to show what I've been working on for the past 3 years now. I'll just add a little tag here though on the screen because that might help us. So as we talk about the game, I'll answer questions from chat, but if there's anything that becomes a little too spoilery, what I'll do is I'll add a spoiler tag. Just real quick. Spoilers ahead. And then if there's anything spoilery, I'll just put that on screen and then remove it once we're done and we don't have any I'm not saying anything that would be spoilery. So okay, that's a little bit big. Come on. There we go. So if anything, I'll have it up on the screen. The copy that I have is almost everything that came with the all-in pledge. I am missing, I should say at the moment, painted miniatures and extra minis. So I have the minis, the plastic miniatures of all of the main character and the expansion characters, but I don't have minis of the other NPCs or of the bosses. I only have those boxes with me, so those are the ones we're gonna open tonight. And was there something else before we started? I guess not. So let's start with, I think I'll begin with like some of the extra accessories, and then I'll move on to onto the big boy itself. The Kickstarter for chapters started in, I want to say 2019. Should have done more research. Because the Kickstarter was already done by the time I came on board. It was... I'm just quickly scrolling through the list of updates. There are so many. But I think it was something like 2019, because at Gen Con 2019, they were displaying, so I wasn't working for them yet, and they had on display two of the starting prologues, the Gangrel intro and the Malkavian intro, but only the Gangrel one was playable. So that's it. The project funded in February 2020. So it was basically the whole month of February was the campaign for it. It got funded, and I was hired later on during the year to start working on it. People had already worked on it at the time, but I was brought on board as a narrative designer in actually November 1st of that year. I remember because I missed out on the office Halloween party. So as part of the pledges, there were like several levels, and you could have, like I said earlier, the minis that I don't have with me. I never kickstarted the game. This is like my comp copy, basically. I also have another copy that we used for playtesting, but I'm not going to show that one as it is rather incomplete. But some of the extras that we had are the metal dice, which are really, really nice. I'll talk about the elephant in the room regarding those dice right away. There was an error in manufacturing, and things are still unfolding about them. But right now, the black dice, the metal black dice, have an issue with them. Not the hunger dice, which are, by the way, gorgeous. I don't know if we can see it. Oh, come on, camera. You were able to do it the other night. Yeah, there we go. So those are the hunger dice. They're all cast in brass. I believe it's brass. And they will absolutely destroy your table and your feet if you walk on them, because these things are pointy. Come on. Trying to close the box. We also have metal booms, which I do not have. Or I have somewhere here, but I couldn't find them for the unboxing. So I think my box is with the other one. Hello, Gambit! The metal booms are also very, very cool to have, to just put in a pouch. I've used them as props in other games, because they look like these. We'll see the cardboard version of those tokens later when I open the main box. But to have them in metal, it looks very much like those coins that you had in John Wick. So, yeah, it was worth it to get them. If only. So, those were the dice. The campaign came with dice bags, with art books, with like a bunch of other stuff. Some of which I have left at the office at the moment. But I might talk about them without necessarily showing them. Gambit, I'm not just showing shiny click-clacks, I'm showing what I've been working on for the past 3 years, actually. And talking about vampire chapters. And you being in chat right now, I'm gonna ask, so I have 4 expansions. I might go through all 4 boxes. Come on, there we see them. Those are the 4 extra clans that we could get as expansions. The Hekata, the La Sombra, the Ministry, and the Banu Hakim. So if chat has a preference, just shout it out. I'll start with this one. Some of them are still shrink wrapped, just because I happen to have opened, I think 2 of them beforehand. I've cheated, and I just wanted to make sure that everything was in there. And also showing it to friends and family. So I think that's what I'll start by doing, is getting the shrink wrap off. Can take a second. There we go here. While I'm doing this and trying not to scratch the box, how have you been doing? Anything fun planned out for Spoopy Month? Okay, I will peel it very slowly, very gentle, like this. I guess it's gonna stick to the box. Yeah, it is. It is. It's sticking. Ooh. Ooh, I didn't like that. There we go. That's $1 down. Nothing planned on my 7. I'm hoping to go and dress up as a wow. I figure you're talking about a Halloween party. Yeah, let me grab the other one right away. I'm just gonna get rid of that plastic right off the bat. We still have yet to play our Baldur's Gate game together. And/or Wartail. How have you been, Blizzard? I've been good. Doing well. Working on stuff I cannot talk about at the moment, but I did finish 3 weeks ago my module I've been working on. Hello, Hawkeye. Welcome, welcome. Otherwise, it was streaming and all that. For Halloween, I already have my my Cthulhuine game kind of prepped out. So the guys are gonna be, hi Faye, welcome, welcome. The home group are going to play through a game I created, which might not be for Spooky Month, but for the whole month of November, we are going to stream the first public playtest of that game. It's called One Frightful Night. I can't wait to show people what it is. I've been working on it, let's say seriously, since it's been 2 years, I think, since August 2021 or something like that. I can't show anything at the moment yet, just because it's there's nothing that I would want to show anyone about One Frightful Night. But what's gonna happen is in November, while we have normally the pause in between seasons for Vampire, it was simpler for me to schedule all the One Frightful Night games in November instead of doing November, December. So we're going to take a break of Vampire on Mondays. We're gonna play with a different group, with my playtest group. We're gonna play One Frightful Night, and then we're gonna come back to Vampire. So we'll have a sort of a Stranger Thing schedule going on, where the last 2 episodes of the season are going to happen, they're going to be streamed a month after the rest of the season. It is a very very spooky game, yes. So for Hawkeye, Faye, who just came in, I'm currently just unboxing the expansion packs. I haven't opened one yet. We were removing the shrink wrap, and I've shown the metal dice. I might show them again. One quick little thing is, if you're interested in the game, I have a spoiler tag right here on screen. Burp, burp. If I ever talk about something that could be spoilery, if you have any questions while we're doing this is an interactive unboxing. So if you have any questions while we're doing this, feel free to ask. This is, of course, the game that I've been writing for the last 3 years. I shouldn't say the last 3 years, because it makes it feel like I was still working on it, a couple of months ago. But no, I worked on it from 2020 to 2022, I think. Yeah. So let's start with, oh god, it smells. The Banu Hakim expansion. So our expansion packs are all made the same. They introduce a new character to the game world, to the story. And they all come with their reversible... Okay, I'm gonna have a problem here with the camera being the way it is. There, that might be a little bit better, because otherwise chat seems to be hiding most of it. I don't like that. Let's just put chat in the corner over here. Yeah, let's just do it like that. Okay. So, yeah, a reversible tile. So the game itself, maybe I should start by talking about the game itself. It's a GM-less, so a storyteller-less RPG. It's a basically what we would call a campaign in a box, or we call it an RPG in a box, where you have everything you need to play a... It's a slightly simplified version of Vampire the Masquerade, but if you don't, like, if no one in your group wants the GM, or you don't want to have to prep for anything, or you have friends who are more into board games than into role-playing games, this is like the perfect step in between. And we'll see more about the game itself, but basically each scenario, or each chapter as we call them, which gets confusing because the we'll see it on the box, but Montreal is the first chapter of the series called Chapters. But each chapter contains like sub-chapters, I guess. Becomes a little convoluted after a while. Essentially, it's to introduce every character, we had a sort of a tutorial. The main characters, I think it's 8 base characters in the game, they all have one sort of tutorial scenario. So if you take the Bruja, for instance, he comes with like a tutorial on combat. Same with the Gangrel, so they have like basic combat, advanced combat. Then if you check the Nosferatu, then it's stealth, then it's another one, then it's another one. Whereas for the expansion characters, it's actually 2 scenarios, none of which are tutorials, even though the first one is always a little, I'm not going to say simpler, but there's a bit more hand-holding in them to sort of show you what your character can do. And then the second one is basically left to your own devices. So the story here for a Banu Hakim friend is that they have to find a person, basically a fugitive vampire, a kindred who is stolen from the sheriff in town, character which we have seen on stream, Nina Barker. So as the Banu Hakim has Aaron Wissal, that's him right here, our little assassin. He hunts down kindred and humans sometimes, but mostly kindred. And he actually is someone kind of a loner, kind of a silent, strong silent type, who absolutely loves the city of Montreal and would do everything to protect the city. So when he's asked to find Nina, who's basically material she stole could put the entire city in jeopardy, he goes on the hunt. And we have, so yeah, that's his character board. That's where you're gonna track hit points, we call it damage tracker, your willpower, your hunger, and then in the back you have their backstory. So each character has its own backstory. You can level them up the way you want, but each character except for the caitiff, they have a specific, well, I mean, I guess the caitiff also has a specific backstory in the sense that their backstory is that they do not have one, or they do not remember them. You have your, like I said, it's a simplified version of Vampire, so it is a simplified character sheet that we have here. So you have your stats, your skills. We've greatly reduced the amount of skills necessary. We've basically bundled a lot of them together. And then the disciplines, which you would notice in the campaign, are from 1 to 3, which is essentially the equivalent of, it's still the 1 to 5 from the RPG, but the level 1 is like level 1, the level 2 is like level 2 and 3, and level 3 is like level 4 and 5. The costs, so we've adjusted XP cost and all that, of course, so that there's like a similar progression to the RPG. And there are multiple copies of it in the that little packet here, so you can replay the game multiple times, and you don't have to erase on the sheet or what have you. And the sheets are all available on our website anyway for download if you need extra copies. And then we have what is essentially the crux of the game and of my job, are booklets. So these are tiny booklets where you're going to, can I do it this way? Yeah, so that y'all can kind of read, I guess. This is basically the entire adventure, the entire scenario. It contains everything that a GM would say, essentially. You could compare it in a way to a sort of a choose your own adventure, or like a solo TTRPG more than anything. So it's got descriptions of places, of people. When you talk to them, they each have their section with their branching dialogue, and then so let's say you move on the tile, you move up to an NPC, you could talk to maybe not gonna take Nina right away because she that might be spoilery, but like for instance, we have here passenger number 7. Gambit, the game is entirely soloable. You can, because there's no GM involved, you can play by yourself if you want to play as 4 different characters, like full-fledged characters, or you can play as one actual character and just have a party of NPCs following you around. It's also possible, and it is possible, though it is very, very challenging to play as a pure single character, like it's what we call like the Iron Man mode at work. It's, are you able the lone wolf version? Because a lot of the game it's feasible, like you will be able to finish the game, but you won't be able to get the best ending if you play pure solo, or you might, but it might be very difficult, if only because you will lack in certain aspects. The game is divided in 3 big sequences, if you will. So we have what we call the exploration sequence, or the main sequence, which is where you're going to walk around, you're going to interact with NPC, you're going to find objects and all that. But when you start interacting with NPC, you go into a dialogue sequence in which, your social skills and your social disciplines are probably going to be way more useful than others. During the exploration sequence, you might encounter, do I have it on there? Yeah. You might encounter action tokens. Those are like traps. They basically activate automatically the moment you move next to them. So they're often what you would have in an RPG, like where the GM says, okay, well, while you're doing this, here's what's happening. Like, oh, you're walking, you're walking down the train. You're walking down the wagon here, like the passenger, like between the passenger seats, and you spy someone trying to eavesdrop on the other side of the door. Well, that little part of you spy someone, blah, 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 well, that would be an action token. And then action tokens will often require, well, you don't know. They'll require skills, they'll require disciplines, they'll require thinking, but you never quite know what they are. And then you have, of course, investigations. Do I have one here? Yeah. So like, for instance, within the train, there's one that says like the luggage compartment. So if we start investigating the luggage compartment, we flip to a specific page. And then, of course, these being investigations, they're going to require you to use your character's like more mental attributes. And then, of course, combat is way more physical. So if you play a pure solo character, you'll never have enough XP to be good at everything, which is why you should have NPCs come in with you. The game was balanced to play with more than just a single mini. And that's something that a few people have not really clued on necessarily in the player base. But that while it is possible, it doesn't mean that it is as easy, or it doesn't mean that it'll open the same amount of doors that you would having a full party. So we ran like multiple playtests of this game, right? When I played when it came my turn to playtest the game, we did a run with 3 characters. And 3 characters was fine. We've done it with 4 before. I've done it with 3. And I know that some of our designers also ran it with 2. And that wasn't a problem. And then, of course, you sort of pad that number with NPCs if you want. Well, that depends on your notion of fun, Gambit, because as far as I'm concerned, playing a game where you might fail and you have to live with the consequences of your actions, I kind of like it. I like going in and, you know, if I mess up at some point, well, that's it. That's my run. Like, I've messed up. My character has to live with those consequences and keep going. So I would find it as fun. Like, my fun here would be to try to see, can I finish the game with a character, and which ending I'm going to get. I said best ending earlier, but that's not quite true. All endings are the same, save for, so there's like 6 or 7 endings to the game, 5 of which are good endings, quote unquote, as in you stay alive. Others may be less so, but depending on what you do in the game, there are moments where you might lock yourself out of an ending, but you don't know that until like 20 chapters later. Like, you've pissed off someone, and thus that person will never be your ally. Just too bad. You realize way later on that, oh shoot, I wanted to get ending whatever. I can't, because I don't have the stuff for it. So it can be as fun, it's just you have to be able to live with the consequences of failed skill checks and all that. So we've got beautifully illustrated NPCs, some of which I remember were done by Kim Van Doyn. I'll have like the credit list. Kim Van Doyn, I think. I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name, Kim. Sketch Ferret. That's how I know on the internet. Wonderful illustrator, and we have a bunch of others. But yeah, so to keep going. Nice tokens, all numbered so that you know which ones to get. We'll see in the main box, we've like separated tokens by numbers. It could have been done better, but there were restrictions of the size of the box to begin with and the weight of the box, because this is just the base game is 25 pounds. If you add on all of the expansions, which are about, I don't know, I'd say a pound or so, you might go up to like 30 pounds, and then if you tack on all of the other things, it gets very heavy. So while the characters have, you know, their character sheets, every NPC you encounter in the game has this little NPC stat sheet over here that we call a state card, and they have their own like HP at the bottom. Their own HP at the bottom here. They've got their stats depending on how many players you play with. Same with HP, so that it's always balanced. It depends what you consider a fortune. The base game itself, depending on which store you can find it in, normally goes for around 200 bucks Canadian. The big pledge of everything was... see, during the Kickstarter, the core game was 150. And shipping was stuff happened during shipping, and the all-in the elder pledge that we call basically was 350, which you will not be able to get the whole 350 pledge in stores, because some of these things were Kickstarter exclusives and so will not be available. But it should, I mean, depending on the store, it might come up to like 300 bucks total, depending on like how much they price each expansion. The shipping itself of the game, the major problem that happened was COVID. Yeah, 10 US. I wish. Because of COVID, because of everything that happened with shipping and the price of containers going up, and then suddenly down, and then back up, and all of that, shipping was a mess. And it is something that we are going to look into for that we've already started looking into for Werewolf, which is also a less heavy game, partly because it is shorter, but also because we've been more judicious in how we're packaging things and using the material, because it might not look like it, but paper is very, very heavy. So yeah, I think with shipping, I think shipping was like, I don't know, between 50 and 100, depending on where you were. It was a big thing. Like, it was an investment. So yeah, and you have, to go back to our NPCs, we also have, each of them has a cool, flavorful, oh, come on, stop. Focus. The cam will never focus. It says don't be a hero. But what it is every NPC has like their like own like flavor, special attack or defense, like special move of what it is. So the ticket controller, for instance, just runs away because he's not a fighter, not a fighter at all. And then we have, as player aids, these little cards here, which have all of your disciplines and the items you can loot. So like all of these here pertain only, because I'm opening an expansion, this is only Aaron's choice of disciplines. You'll never have them all. At best, you're gonna have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, in his case, there's one of them you won't have. Everything else you can get if you level your character accordingly. And then you have beautifully illustrated items, which here are the items that are specific to Aaron's side quests and to his character. So he dual wields a gun and a knife called the Karambit that he got, I believe, from his sire. There's a bit of a murky backstory element there that we might spend upon in a future game. But for now, suffice to say that I'm gonna put the spoiler here. But suffice to say that the knife has a reason to play in there. And of course, oh well, have a good night. Have a good night, Gambit. I'll see you later as I show the mini for Aaron, which had stopped. Oh boy, I don't know what the range of my camera is for the focus. I don't know enough about cameras. I thought I had it done properly. They're all gonna stay fuzzy. I'll try to figure something out during break later. But yeah, so that's what each expansion contains. So his is about finding a fugitive kindred, who's played by, in our Monday game, who's played by Animation, who is also a sponsor of the channel. Then we have 3 more expansions. I might just go a bit quicker through those boxes since we've already, talked about one of them. This is the Ekata. So the Ekata, for those of you who weren't aware, is basically the old clan Giovanni and others, basically all of the necromancer clans in Vampire. So all of those kindred who had access to necromancy. So her name is Aurora, and her adventure begins in Norlands. So we have a Norlands tile here, so it's not just Montreal centric. And then this is a church in the, well, This is a massacre at a church in the suburbs, rather far suburbs of Montreal. And again, like with Aaron, like the other expansion, it comes with, you know, the whole kit and caboodle of the NPCs, unique NPCs to those scenarios. The cards that she has. So her special item is, opening it here, is her sire's old grimoire. And then, of course, again, you know, all of these discipline cards that she has. So to remind you of all the powers she has access to. And we've got the state cards for villains. And actually, we have this one, because Aaron didn't have any. But Aurora does. She has, what I was telling Gambit before he left, an ally. So it's an NPC ally that follows your character around. In the case of this expansion, the ally is Charlotte, is limited to those 2 chapters that take place in there. So she's not coming back. For spoilery reason, she is not coming back to the into the main game. However, I do know that there is a player somewhere who created a fan-made module to investigate what happens and to sort of give closure to what happens to Charlotte, which I found amazing. And so, kind of like enemies, our allies have special attacks, they have stats, they have HP, and they will help. We'll see it when I open the main box, but they have like a deck of combat cards of move that they take. So it's all randomized, if you will. It follows like an AI in a way, like we would in a in a video game. So there's like, they have like pre-programmed like moves and targeting, exactly like the enemies that you encounter. And so yeah, the sheets again for Aurora, and her two chapters, Carnival in New Orleans, and the sequel, The Abyss Stares Back, in the suburbs. And I'm gonna try to show the mini. Hopefully, maybe if I like put a, what if there was a sort of a plain field in the back? I don't know if it's gonna change anything focus wise. No, it still does the same thing. I'm not that great with I'm not very tech savvy when it comes to camera, which is a shame because the minis are very well rendered and have a lot of details, which I feel my cam doesn't do it justice. Then we've got the La Sombra expansion. There we go. Same thing, you know, they're all the same. Double-sided map for his 2 chapters, which take place in this case in this is a art restoration studio in Montreal, and this is a summer cottage outside of Montreal, where things happen. So the La Sombra basically plays with the it's like their, I guess, initiation rite now within the lore of Vampire, where for a La Sombra to be accepted into the Camarilla, they have to hunt down and destroy an older La Sombra. And in the case of our expansion, it just so happens that there are 2 La Sombras showing up to Montreal. And so they're both basically racing against time and each other in a way to try to find the elder La Sombra, Damien Buckfield, and try to figure out, you know, how to hunt him down and gain their place. The chapters have These ones have like multiple different endings depending on how well you finish the first one. It'll affect the second one. And this is the mini, which I'm gonna... Oh. I don't know if it's because I'm shaking so much. Yeah, there we go. We almost had it. Well. But that is Edward Harvey, Our La Sombra. And again, you know, the discipline cards, the items with the glorious 2x4, which is one of my favorite weapon. And that takes care of that expansion. And last but not least is the Ministry. So aside from the core Camarilla Anarch clans, mind you, the Ministry is normally Anarch in V5, but when we were writing like the base game, we had to decide like which clan are we going to take. So we went with the classic clans of older editions because people could recognize them more easily, and then have the other ones as DLC, as expansions. And Melissa Santos is our Ministry. She's an investigative journalist who starts her adventure in South America. I think it's Brazil, I can't remember, but essentially she was sold out by her, well, now ex-boyfriend, to the cartel that she was investigating. And she has to basically flee that place. So her, kind of like some of the other prologues we'll see in the base game, starts back when Melissa was not a vampire yet. So you play a regular human, devoid of vampiric powers, for the first chapter. And then by the time the second comes around, where she's hunting down this betraying ex-boyfriend, she is now a vampire. So she gets embraced in between the two. It's not going to spoil it, but it's talked about in the conclusion of the first one, in the introduction to the second one. But she gets turned and then basically will, you know, settle the score in South America, and then she moves to Montreal to hunt down the last loose end that left, basically, that disappeared as she was investigating this cartel, a person by the name of Eduardo Ignacio. And these are her characters. So we had basically two main illustrators for all of the NPCs, and that's why you're going to see two different styles in a way. I don't know if it'll show, but like Melissa was done by one, and again, I'll have the credits, the names in a sec, and our other artist did the other ones. Both styles are very cool. They look like sort of realistic paintings of people. And so yeah, we have our two scenarios. Again, you know, they're like a solo RPG with everything that you can find, the people you can interact with, the action that happens, combat. In her case, there's also a lot. She has a few unique items. Yeah, she's got two of them, the Tainted Holy Cross and a piece of scrap metal, which is can be very vital in her scenario. But there are others, so that's one thing I didn't mention earlier, is just because the expansions are kind of self-contained, they still rely on a lot of components that you have in the base game. In the case of Melissa, she can find, you can basically loot weapons from the cartel, and those are all weapons that are found in the base game. So while you could, you know, if you wanted to just buy an expansion by itself to just play those scenarios, it's possible, but you'd be missing a few key components, essentially. And her mini right here of Melissa with a flashlight, which right now is just a big ass blur. Come on, show up. I need to figure something out with that. There. Melissa with a flashlight, crouched and investigating some probably dark recesses of under Montreal. Alright. So those are the 4 expansions. Ministry, La Sombra, Banu Hakim, and Hekata. I know there are other clans, but we did not have expansions for them at the time. Perhaps in another game, perhaps in the future. Who knows? But right now, those are the ones that are playable. And of course, everyone involved with the base clans here, which we'll get into, but not right now. I'm just going to take a quick break. I will be right back. Hello, we're back with music that seems to not be running in the background. What's going on? There we go. I think some of the songs are a bit louder than the others. Hey, we're back, and we have the big boy. So, this is the main game. Flip it so we see on camera. This is, okay, this is a problem with my keyboard. I'm just gonna have to maybe just move this over here, right? There we go. That makes sense. Don't look at the mess. Do not look at the mess. Ah, there we have it. So, the base game of Vampire Chapters. This is a beast of a game. It's 3 years of hard work, even more so for some of our illustrators. But this has everything that you need to play a GM-less version, if you will, a simplified GM-less version of Vampire the Masquerade Chapters. Ooh, hello Raiders! Hello, welcome, welcome! You're just in time for the base game. Hello, welcome. Make yourself comfortable. I'm losing my train of thought here. Yes, so to talk about maybe a bit of the game first, it takes place in Montreal, of course, for those of you who have followed Montreal by Night, as I was saying earlier before break. This is basically, I set Montreal by Night in a sort of prequel universe to Vampire Chapters. So there are characters that we're going to see as I'm unveiling them one by one, and I'm going to go through the box. You'll notice that some of the characters, some have yet to appear in Montreal by Night, but they are here. Some already are there. You've met them. On my cover art here is right here. You can't really see her, but that's Luciana, the Nosferatu that Trooper's character found in the sewers. So like I said earlier, of course, you know, I'm not trying to replicate Chapters, but it is the same city, it is the same NPCs, and by virtue of just existing, yes, Trooper, I am going to show you all of the goods. I can't really type in chat anymore because my keyboard is all the way over here, but I'll try to keep an eye out and reply as often as possible. So yes, this is basically, if you want to play in the same universe, this is the canon new version of the city, Montreal, updated to Vampire 5e. Let's just... I love that the box has like the different textures on it. The Chapters is, I don't know, it's like sticky in a way. It's kind of weird. But this is the box with the gorgeous illustration by Mark Simonetti. Those of you who are comic fans might recognize the name and perhaps even recognize the art style of Mr. Simonetti. And like we said earlier before break, this is of course Chapters 1, takes place in Montreal. There will be others, at least as far as the game has hinted. I can't really talk about anything at the moment, but the first story is all about Montreal and the kindred that live within. Wait, my image is mirrored? So y'all can't read anything? Because if it's reversed for you, I'm gonna need to I'm gonna need to fix it. Yeah, just let me know, chat, if it is reversed for you. Okay. So I'm actually seeing... Oh, boy. Alright, let me just... How do I flip this around? Interface viewer. No. It's because I don't want to go to a different scene, right? take just a second. I'm gonna try something here. Nope, that's not going to work. That might actually do something. Let's go here, video settings, and what? Why can't I just flip it around? Ah, there we go. Boop. Is that any better? You should be able to read now and to see the box. Oh yeah, I can also read my... Oh wow. This whole time, I've been going at it with everything in reverse, so I guess I'll show some of the expansions after with everything in the proper side, no longer reversed. Cool. So yes, you can see all of the main characters here on the illustration. It's like this sort of fisheye of Montreal with the... Whoops, it would be over here. The Olympic Stadium, so the Yuma's territory and the Anarchs. And then you have the Princess Tower over here. No, you're going to go down here because you're taking up a lot of room. The box itself is 25 pounds of goodies and is rather very heavy. The game is still, by the way, available at friendly local gaming stores. So we have, as part of the components, we've got all the tiles. So the game is a GM-less version, a simplified GM-less version of Vampire the Masquerade 5e that you can play either by yourself, because Gambit asked the question earlier, you can play solo with NPCs, so to have like in a CRPG, you have like your NPC followers following you around, or you can play with, a full group of 4 like player characters. Hawkeye Werewolf is lighter than chapters. The box itself for Werewolf is about, well, unless we change things, it's about this size here. So like there's a certain section over here that's like, I don't know, maybe like a 4 inches less, and it's less deep because I don't know how well we can show that on camera. I've had to lift 250 of those boxes last week. But this is, if I compare it to like my hand, right? It's rather huge. I have a measuring tape here. So, size-wise, it is in height. Like, come on, tape. Come on. It's 8 inches tall. 8 inches tall by... And then it's a square, so the rest is rather easy to calculate, but like 8 inches by 13 and a half. Krellin Gloomhaven is, I think it's wider as a box, but it is shorter. We have a copy at work, but I don't remember. So I have my tiles up here. We'll talk about the tiles and the maps that are right next to me over here. I'll just get some of this stuff out so I can move the box. That's our rule book. I'm not going to go through the rules. If you know Vampire 5e, it's a simplified version of it with a different combat mechanic that plays with cards instead of just, you stating your action as you would in a TTRPG. Ah, I can breathe. Finally. So the storybook is one of the key pieces of the game. What it does is it contains the introduction, the setup, and the conclusion of each scenario. So that's one thing when we're talking about trying to play one of the expansion as a standalone thing. One of the key pieces of information that's going to be missing is the storybook. So this is because I showcased the Banu Hakim earlier, and we saw that map. So this is where you would set all of the NPCs. This is where you would set the zones to investigate. and this is your narrative introduction. And then when you finish, you have your conclusion and sometimes instructions on how to proceed to the next chapter, etc., etc. There are a total of 41 main chapters, in addition to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 tutorials. So the introduction, the backstory, if you will, of all 8 main characters are part of those playables. So that's already 49 playable chapters total. And then we have a bunch of side quests, if you ignore the expansions, that are 2-parters for most of them, though the Hollow is a 4-parter. You have Ancient Path 1 and 2, you have Hollow 1, 2, 3, 4, you have Obscure Past 1 and 2, and then you have special scenarios in case, like Dixon on our Monday stream, you are a serial breaker of the Masquerade. We'll get back to that in a sec. But this is our big storybook, which is kind of heavy because the book itself is 172 pages. Oh, and for those of you who follow the game on Mondays, of course, my good friend Alex Samard, and basically the list of stuff he has for sale at his pawn shop. So he acts like the town's like vendor, like merchant, if you will, in an older D&D game. Krellin asked, I was about to ask if it had a King of Montreal. Okay. As I've said earlier, if I ever talk about something spoilery, I will put this on it, on the screen, spoilers ahead, and I will remove it once I'm done talking about something spoilery. So to answer your question, Krellin, it's not a scenario titled King of Montreal per se, but there is a way to become King of Montreal. Spoilers are done. I don't know if I should have like a sound alert when I do that or something. But I'll try to keep the spoilers as little as possible. By the way, I'm doing this whole unboxing, but I'm one of the last person to have received, to have received their box. My complimentary copy was among one of the last, so for our player base, those who have already backed the game, like many of them have already finished it. But it is still available for purchase. Okay, this is, I just need the separator somewhere I can find. Here we go. This is part 1 of, I don't know, 3, or part 2 of 3, I should say. So we've got our dice. If you were looking for dice for Vampire, this one has plenty enough on top of the metal dice that we talked about earlier. We've got our bases, we've got our little blood cubes to track your hunger. We've got a sand timer, because the game, sometimes we have events in the game that are time sensitive, and that the coterie must make a decision within a certain amount of time. I think the sand timer itself is like 45 seconds. So, of course, if you're playing solo, you don't really have that issue. But when you're playing as a group... Hey, Scott! I'm gonna show your character soon, Scott. But if you're playing as a group, you know, you have 45 seconds to argue which is the best course of action. And you have to live with the consequences. The game has a nice little sheet for the rules. One of the things that we do not use in this game, because it's a simplified version of Vampire, there are no messy crits, there are no bestial failures. You can crit, you can fail, but it's not going to trigger anything else. When I get through the character sheets, I'll show like the frenzy and torpor and all that, but for the most part, and we have some very sweet humanity cards to track your downward spiral, as it were. But yeah, so this is one of the rules that's been removed because it would have been too complicated, which is why, you know, we have a very basic die rolling mechanic where it's you know, a 10 is always 2 successes. Otherwise, you know, 6, 7, 8. Well, it's with the symbols, right? So it's an ank, a double ank, or a blank face. You still have the skulls for hunger checks and all that. And there's a somewhat, that's not true. There's a kind of a bestial failure mechanic that I introduced to the game later on, which is if you roll your hunger dice and you roll more skulls than you have successes, then the beast takes over and you gain a point of hunger. So there's no other mechanic than that. It just makes you hungrier, but of course, hunger being limited, at some point it's going to take you out of the game. And also, because it is a simplified version, the amount of successes, the difficulty of checks is lower than what you would have in the TTRPG by a few numbers. We've got our super trackers over here. What is this? Oh, the little anks to track HP. But we have the Masquerade tracker, right? Very important, right, Dixon? The status, which is important too. We track the coterie status, so no one has like the status merit, but the coterie as a whole can have it, and that gives you access to, and I'll show you later, the different territories that you're allowed to feed in. So you can hunt in certain places on the island, provided you have the status for it. And of course, the higher your status, the better the prey, thus the better the bonuses that you get from feeding in those places. Because it's not just a question of lowering your hunger, but also a question of getting fat loot. And the round tracker whenever we need to track stuff in the game itself. So let's go with the minis first. I've been having a bit of an issue trying to have them not blur on camera because I'm bad at this and I don't know the range exactly, and it's kind of a shame because, well, they are beautiful, very detailed, and my camera is just being a butt and you can't really see everything. But this is Jade. This is our Tremere. She is the child of our good friend Valoisant. And so she's, you know, trained by the blood sorcery prodigy of Montreal. The camera can't focus and doesn't have the range. Yeah, Krellin, I don't know how to fix this. Put behind it with a contrasting background. Yeah, I tried the thing that people do with their hands, and it doesn't seem to work. Like sometimes it focuses, okay. Sometimes it focuses, but... Give me a rule book. What if I do this? Does it work? Does it work? Can we see her? Can we see her? Well, it almost did it. So I'm sorry, you might have to deal with the blurry things because I shake too much. We have the Malkavian Herald, who's the child of Lydia Moscato, which we saw in the first episode of Montreal by Night. Aaron Gangrel, child of our good friend Yuma, which we've heard, for those of you watching on Monday, Yuma did mention to Dixon that he called back his child home. This is Thomas Chartrand, the Brewjaw of the group. Of the game, I should say. Cool character. We haven't seen him in the game itself, but in chapters, he's like right on the cover, being all angry and mean right here. Thomas is oddly enough, he's the liaison between Yuma's Anarchs and the Prince's Camarilla. Because he used to be a very successful negotiator for unions way back in the 60s and 70s here in Quebec. And so he, despite having a short fuse, he's actually a very ruthless negotiator. And he was chosen by Yuma to be the go-between. Then we have our Nosferatu. Oh, that almost worked. Right, Luciana. Luciana Ricci lives in the sewers, used to be an opera singer. The Caitiff, who's the bland character. So we have, before the break, I talked about the fact that I don't have like every extra box that comes with the all-in pledge. But when you have the expanded miniatures box, what's his name? Gabe. Gabe is actually the blank slate. The game itself, the base game, comes with a male version of Gabe, but you have a female version of Gabe in the expanded minis, because you can be either and play as, a man or a woman. And they are both, in the narrative, they're both there for page count reasons. In the prologue, in his backstory, it's presented as if you were playing the male version, and he talks about the other as being his sister. But you can easily reverse the roles. It's just, if that had been a video game and we weren't limited in the amount of, things we can fit inside this box, which is already very heavy, we would have gone full on have both options all the time. Verivore, the game, is available at a lot of gaming stores already. And then we have our two last characters, Samuel Armstrong, child of the Prince of Vancouver, character inspired by B. Dave Walters. And he's newly arrived in Montreal, and he has to basically act as a dispute settler for the prince. And then last but not least, we have Nico. Nico, they are a toreador, a sculptor who took... basically, Nico is special in the sense that they hung out with a vampire who became their sire, Philippe. And they basically had to nag Philippe over years to be embraced, because Nico wanted to see how their inspiration and their art would change if they were to become undead instead of living. Nico is is non-binary, uses they/them pronouns throughout the whole game. And yeah, they're the Toreador. There's a lot of spoilery things I can talk about. I'm gonna leave it for a sec here. And that's, like I said, one part of the box. The other part is all of our punch boards. We'll get to them later, because right now I'm trying not to drop everything, but I want to showcase what's left in the box first. So we'll start with the characters. Each character has, of course, their character sheet over here. So this is Samuel's character sheet. There's multiple copies of each character sheet. Like I said, it is a simplified version of Vampire. So you can see, the disciplines go from level 1 to level 3, which is basically an amalgam of level 1, level 2 and 3, and level 4 and 5. The skills go all the way up to 5, but you'll notice, for those of you who have played Vampire before, that there are way less skills than there are on the character sheet. We've sort of bundled them together. And then the stats at the top. And to make things quicker for a lot of players who aren't used to playing Vampire, the way chapters work is that skills give you automatic successes all the time. And the dice are only rolled for the stats. So you have less dice to roll, less stuff to keep track of. And here, if we couldn't see the minis earlier properly, we can at least see the beautiful illustrations. Again, I will call out, I'll give a list of credits to the artists and people who have worked on the game later. But this is Thomas So each board has basically a tracker for their HP, a tracker for their willpower, and a tracker for their hunger. The trackers go all the way up to 10, but we have like little tokens that you put in depending on your stats, because like the RPG, you don't start with, you know, a pool of 10 hit points. And the back of each board has the character's backstory. So our good friend Thomas the Bruja negotiator, used to be part of a lot of unions back here, was embraced by a vampire that appears, a kindred that appears later in the campaign, an enigmatic circuit judge, if you will. She's a character kind of inspired by ideas that Pooja and Leona Maple have thrown at me when I asked them. But essentially, yeah, it's like an anarch circuit judge on a motorcycle. Part of the inspiration came from, you know, the old circuit judges back in old-timey America. And I like the idea of, you know, the Western idea of the circuit judge, especially in games like Deadlands or any Weird West, where your circuit judge will travel the land with, you know, their trusty rifle and put down undead, and then go into towns and fix issues and all that. And Nyaya, Thomas's sire, is just that. So when she embraced them, they left Montreal. Because it was during Sabbat years. And so she took him away, and so he never met the Sabbat. When the game starts, he's back in the city, but he's not aware, like, I mean, he's nominally aware of the Night of Ashes and all that, but he wasn't there when it happened. Nico, right here. Cool Toreador. And their backstory, which I've already talked about before. There's another piece of the backstory. I'm going to put the spoiler tag up because it's mildly spoilery. So for all of you just tuning in, mute the stream until the spoiler tag is removed. Going up. But Nico is at the heart of some of the troubles that plague Montreal, because all of the Toreadors in town have started disappearing, and no one's doing anything about it. And as she goes on an errand for her sire, she comes back and sees a white van driving away from their sire's place. Sorry. And as they go upstairs, they notice like all of the ghouls and all of their mortal, like in the know friends, if you will, sycophants mostly, are dead. Philippe is gone, and Nico's beginning to freak out because, well, everybody else is gone. Diana is gone. Betty is still here, but that means that there's, you know, less and less and less Toreadors in town, and that's what kickstarts the whole thing, because the person that they found kidnapping all of those vampires is none other than the mysterious kindred that wears a coat of faces, which we've sort of begun to talk about in Montreal by Night. Alright, the spoiler is gone. This basically spoiled essentially her intro and sort of the premise of the game. Erin, which I adore, she is the Gangrel, because of course, favorite clan. Child of Yuma. And you learn a lot about Yuma through Erin, because we'll get into that later, but there's a lot of like character-specific interactions in the game that happen. And Yuma might not have been the best sire in the world. There's a healthy dose of abuse on the part of Yuma. I should say not abuse, but neglect. Yuma is a very neglectful sire, one who seems to think that you know, not teaching anything to his child was the way to go. Spoiler, it's not. But there's an entire, like, her entire, like, side quest and everything deals with this. Up next, my baby, Jade, which I wrote extensively about in the game. Jade is a student at McGill, and so for the purposes of the game, of course, so for chapters, compared to Montreal by Night, because in Montreal by Night, you know, Valois is at the University of Montreal. Kind of the issue that we've had with the game is that for a lot of places that do exist in the world, and I'll talk about it too when I show some of the maps, we had to get permission to use those places, even to just name some of these places. And there are some who have refused on account of this being a, you know, 18 and over horror game that talks about vampires. So one university that gave us the green light was McGill, and that's why everything that takes place in the game, basically if we need a college, if we need to talk about a campus, if we need to talk about whatever, it's always McGill and everything that's around McGill. It kind of helps that the university is smack dab in the middle of downtown, but that's what it is. So she was studying a she was on her way to get her master's. Jade specialized in microbiology, more specifically in hematology and blood disorders. And her research got her to speak at the annual hematology convention in Atlanta, Georgia. And she was fought over by both the Ventru and the Tremere in Montreal for how intelligent she is and how cunning she can be. And Valois ended up snagging her and embracing her, and then proceeded to be not the greatest sire. There's a lot of vampire daddy issues in this game, but Valois wanted. Basically, Valois is himself a prodigy, and he wanted Jade to be exactly like him, like molding her to be his exact replica, if you will. And she doesn't want that. In the game, she works closely with Caleb as she's basically the city's CSI kindred. They send her to her intro is all about a crime scene. Basically, someone breached a masquerade, and she needs to go in while the cops are there and try to, with all the proof, like all the evidence that she can find, create a fake story to cover for the masquerade breach. So that is Jade. Then we have, of course, the twins, Gabe and Gabe. Gabrielle and Gabriella. Used to be, so whoever you decide to play was in their 20s in like 1960s Quebec, part of like the entire like poet and artist movement here with the Quiet Revolution. They were snagged by the Sabbat, basically embraced something very traumatic had to happen. The Sabbat basically broke Gabe down and staked and buried Gabe to be turned into a shovelhead at some point. Unfortunately, the Night of Ashes happened like right after that, and so Gabe stayed unconscious in torpor for decades until he was or she was unearthed by an unsuspecting couple who were redoing their garden in their backyards. And as Gabe wakes up, goes on a rampage, murders everyone, that ends his introduction, and that's where Jade's introduction begins, as she's the one that gets called into the crime scene. Then we have Luciana, our little sewer-dwelling kindred. She's a bit different in the game than she was in Montreal by Night. In chapters, she acts as the informant, the eyes and ears, kind of an information gatherer for anyone in town that needs it. She just, you need to learn a secret about something, she'll do it. Her role was kind of different for the stream on Mondays because I gave a lot of it back to Melvin Crossman. Melvin in chapters, he's there, but he has a very minor role, as Melvin is my boss's own character in his like his longest running vampire game. And so we all have, like, all of our characters have a cameo in the game. We have Samuel, like I said, inspired by Mr. B. Dave Walters. So Samuel is the Ventruse Ventrue, and is in Montreal, kind of under blackmail. It's not quite clear. This might be expanded upon in later games, but his sire sort of loaned him to Hilkers, and there's something about Samuel's mortal family still being alive and kind of nominally aware that he's alive, but they don't really know what's going on, and so he has to, you know, do exactly what the prince wants, because otherwise the family might be off. And then we have Harold. Harold is our Malkavian. He's an anxious mess whose clan bane basically manifests as massive anxiety that makes him, like, unable to act in social situations. He is a psychologist, a therapist, whose life was essentially ruined. Part of where the bane came from, of course, but was ruined by his sire, Lydia, who toyed with him until she was like, okay, your mind is now opened to other possibilities. It's time to make you into a vampire. And in fact, his introduction is a little bit different, because depending on how you play it out, you will either be seen as a rising star of the Montreal Malkavians, or as like a black sheep, and almost like an insult to the other Malkavians. Those were the character sheets, of course. We have special envelopes, which I will not open on stream. I don't know why, but they're completely sealed. I tried opening one the other day, and I don't like how it tears. I know what's inside them anyway, and I have the PDFs, so I don't need to open them to play. But they all have something special, and if you are, I'm gonna say lucky enough, you can probably guess what they're about by the clues that we've left on it. And the last envelope, of course, contains, spoilers, all of the endings to the game. Depending on how you end the game, you're going to pick up one of those cards and have to read it. Then we've got a bunch of little cards as helpers. So here we have all of, or many of, the discipline cards, because I think this is combat, this is combat, this is combat. These are disciplines, yeah. So there's a good chunk of discipline powers. Ignore the white cards, those are different. Those are buffs and debuffs, we call effect cards. But those are all the different discipline powers you can get in the game. The effect cards we use as either temporary buffs that your characters can get, or debuffs if they failed something. Just to show you real quick. So like, for instance, here we have a card called Flesh Wounded, sorry, with the flavor text being just a flesh wound, and it gives you a penalty to your physical. So that's how, like, we can track things that have happened to your character. And also, a lot of them are purely for not for roleplay purposes, but to determine things that have happened to your character in the game. I'm trying to find where they are. Writing the flavor text for those cards was a very hilarious afternoon. Obvious. So I think those are the last ones. Yeah, for instance, we have Ghoul. You can make someone, turn someone into a ghoul at some point. You can even get a herd in the game depending on what you do. And then we have others like, not that one might be, but here, like for instance, this is called Exit Strategy. The card itself doesn't know it, doesn't do anything. But it serves in the course of the game to know, you know, if your character knows about a secret exit during one of the chapters. There's like a heist that takes place, and while you're casing the joint, you can find info about it, and exit strategy is one of those. We have a bunch of items that I absolutely love the illustrations of. Again, I'm gonna shout out the artists later, but this is mostly Sketch Ferrets art. I think I say mostly. I need to. I don't remember like who did what exactly. But Kim did a lot for us. And here we were talking about Dixon earlier. This is the humanity cards. So as you can see, this is humanity 7. Then you go down to humanity 6. Humanity 5. Let's skip 4, go right down to 3. And you can see the heart, your once human heart begins to turn into something kind of disgusting. And thus when you get to 1 humanity, this is what's inside of your vampire. You have teeth on your heart and a bunch of disgusting stuff, and you get bonuses and penalties. So playing a low humanity vampire still gives you sort of bonuses because, well, you know, intimidation and the beast being more aware. So you get stuff, but the thing is getting to 0 humanity, just like in the role-playing game, you lose your character, so you still need to be careful, and you cannot regain humanity throughout the game. So let me just place those little things back here so I don't forget anything. And then we have stat cards. So I was saying earlier, you can play the game with up to 4 players, but if you play by yourself or with less, you can always take some of the NPCs with you, and they have, whoops. Okay, those are actual villains. But each one has 2 special attacks that they can do. Their stats vary according to the amount of players, and then you have their HP at the bottom, and each one has this special ability that they have, a passive that we call. So for instance, playing with Erin as an NPC, she gives +1 movement to everyone. Playing with the Ventru, well, the Ventru uses Dominate. And basically, if any NPC sees you breaching the Masquerade, he's going to use his, it's the Forget ability. It's like Dominate level 1, but essentially he's going to erase the mind of the NPCs, preventing you from breaching the Masquerade. And then all of our enemies, of course, they all follow the same rules. They all follow the same stuff. They have, you know, HP, they have attack, they have damage. That's all related to the amount of players playing the game. And then we have some of them will have passive abilities, especially monsters. Some of them will have, so for instance, those of you who have followed the stream would know about Locke, the gargoyle. Here he is. You can get into a tussle with Locke, and he's kind of he's like a side boss, a secret boss in the game. Nothing spoilery, but it's a side quest. You would recognize also Sid from the stream, and yep, the twins, Maggie and Ella. And Jimmy, our friend Jimmy, trying to get the glare off. Jimmy, oof. Yeah. we go. There we go. There's a total of over 83 different enemies you can find in the game and fight. You don't have to... And that's the thing is, this being vampire, you don't have to always fight everything. But if you do, they're there. And those NPCs, actually, even your allies, they follow basically what we would call as an AI in a way, which is called a combat deck. So whereas you as a player will play your cards on your turn, such as like the bite attack. So it's like, oh, it's your turn in combat, what do you do? I play bite. And then you have to cycle through your cards, so there's like a layer of strategy, a layer of tactics that you won't have in the RPG itself. So a more of a gamist approach in that regards. But while you get to choose, enemies do not. And so they have specific decks depending on what the type they are. So this is the vampire combat deck, and it contains all the moves a vampire NPC could do in combat. This is, for instance, the authority deck. Very fuzzy there. But so what'll happen is they'll play a card at random from all of these according to... They have on their sheet up here, sorry. Oof. They have like their movement, line of sight, and preferred target. So Sylvester, for instance, will always attack whoever has the highest initiative in combat. And so he would draw his card. Let's take one at random. This one. So he's going to claw. Normally, yeah, I'm gonna get to that, Prax, in a second. He would get to claw someone, but see, this now says lowest initiative, which means that it changes. Instead of attacking his favorite target, which is the fastest person, they're gonna go for the slowest and deal, in this case, it's what, +1 damage. So he would deal, in a game with like 4 players, he would deal 4 damage. So move up to the slowest character, claw them, do 4 damage, lower their initiative. Moving on like that. Whereas the players get to decide what they want to do. There's this sort of layer of challenge when you're fighting enemies where you might be able to understand the pattern of a monster in combat and thus find ways to like kite them or find ways to cheese the encounters. The whole point of Locke, Sid, and the others, those like side bosses, is to give a nice challenge to those who are more combat oriented and would like to test their mettle in the hollow. These here are basically most of what I do on the daily. Brax, by the way. Oh wow, I got it right here. So we have 2 in-house authors, and we have guest writers, like freelancers. And this, by the way, for those of you who are interested, this is the chapter that was written by Prax. So we invited her over to write one of the chapters where you go inside one of the mausoleums in the Montreal cemetery on top of the mountain. And it's sort of a mini, like, Indiana Jones-esque scenario where you have to figure out how to get the sarcophagus to open and get something important that you're looking for without dying in the process, because there are very, very deadly traps on there, because the person that you're looking for was kind of aware that vampires were a thing. The game itself, so all of these little booklets here, from the first one to the last one, including the expansions, this is a total of 700,000 words, which is, I believe, longer than Lord of the Rings, or something like that. Just
Because I think I remember reading something about it, and I was like, wow, we really did. Word count.
Yeah, Lord of the Rings, the entire series, including The Hobbit, is 576,000 words. Unstable Dia says, when we get to that one, I'll remember to blame Prax for our woes. Yep. So yeah, we wrote 700,000 words. I myself have written 400,000 out of those 700, which is a lot, but it was very fun to write all of them, and they vary in length and in options. Like some of them are smaller, like this one here, Whispers, Faith, and Blood, which is gonna put the spoiler tag. Whispers, Faith, and Blood is a fight where you take on the entirety of the Second Inquisition by yourself in the middle of Montreal. It's a bloodbath. It is very, very dangerous. But it's one of those like major plot points in the game. That said, tangentially related, Whispers, Faith, and Blood introduces an NPC, and the Archbishop of Montreal, not Sabat Archbishop, but a human, whose face claim, I don't know if you can see, if it's clear enough, but I can let you guess who he was inspired by, or who was his face claim. It's an actor who played roles related to that, the vampires and all that. But yeah, so we have all of the scenarios. The introductions are here at the start, so they serve as a way to learn how to play the game. So like the Bruja is the like the combat tutorial, but it's like basic combat. Then the Gangrel is... no, that's the opposite. Gangrel is basic combat, Bruja is advanced combat, Nosferatu is stealth, Tremere is investigation, advanced investigation, Malkavian is basic investigations, Ventru is social. It's like there's no real basic social. I was gonna say the Toreador, but the Toreador is more of a like fully fleshed out prologue where it's like should be the last one you play, right? I guess the Caitiff would be basic dialogue, and then the Ventru is advanced dialogue. And we have here at the end the red book. That little red book is the feeding events, so where you can hunt and where you can get your prey depending on, and your bonuses and stuff. I had a lot of fun writing them. You can, of course, you do one at a time in the game. You'll never... so there are 41 chapters in the entire campaign, but you'll never play 41 chapters total. You'll just... I think you get to play 30 among all of them, because a lot of them are branching, and so if you go one way, you sort of close the others. So there is a replayability value. And there are a total of 60 feeding events. So you can clearly play the game twice and never stumble on the same prey. I think actually, chat, if you're interested, we've got here, I'm gonna take a district at random, and I'm gonna ask you. There we go. Let's go downtown. Let's go feeding downtown. Can you give me a number between 1 and 10? The first person who replies, I'll take their number. 1 to 10. Seven, Schmelzer, thank you. 7 is... Oh, you almost got the funny one. Busking musician. So see, in this case, you would find a busking musician. So there's an intro of like what you see, and then you have to choose an approach. So he's playing selling CDs, promising beats for every occasion. And then you can choose either the social approach, which is to ask him to play beats, and join him in a performance and sort of get acquainted with them to try to corner him later. Or the mental approach, which is to come in and just teach him, like, right off the bat, teach him to get a bigger audience. And of course, some of these approaches are more successful than the others. There are roles that you need to accomplish. So with the musician, clearly trying to come in and telling them, they're bad at what they do is not the way to go. You can still succeed, but you might not. And if you actually succeed on this one, for instance, not only is your hunger gone, but you get a special card called Party On, which I don't remember which number it is. I'm not gonna go and grab it, but I think it gives you a bonus in movement, because the musician, essentially what the card ends up telling, like the sort of little story that the card ends up telling, is that musician was most definitely high on something. So that's what we have in there. NPCs. I don't know if Scott is still in the chat, but Scott and I used to play in a vampire game over on Praxis channel some years back, and I made our characters in chapters because we needed there's a scenario where you leave Montreal. It's actually Flory's interlude, where you leave Montreal and you need to find info. In chapters, the info you need to find actually is because of all the problems plaguing Montreal. You find out that there are two kindred on the outskirts of Quebec City who have dealt with those issues before, and not only have come out on top, but have consistently come out on top. And you figure those two vampires are probably the people to ask for help. And then when you get there, you learn that while the rumors are sort of true that they did come out on top, it cost them everything. It is not like something that they suggest doing, but you can try to convince them because, for those who have seen the show with Scott and I on Praxis channel, they're an old bickering married couple, and you can try to convince one, you can try to convince the other, you can try to convince them both. There are different endings that you get, but here is Alexander Eriksson right up here, number 84. Kind of a bit fuzzy. If I want to show the artwork, I think I'm just gonna grab the book. Whoops. Sorry, chat, I hit the mic. See no evil, hear no evil. Hunters of Hunters. There we go. Gonna put that here. So this is the chapter, Hunters of Hunters, where you go to a CD bar. And here you have none other than, because I had to poke fun also at Eriksson, but this is Alexander Eriksson Esquire. His full... Can you just unblurry it? There you go. Hey Alex, that's hey Scott, that's you. Hey Alex, that's the character. I don't recall the entire... There's like a placard next to his office in the back of that bar, and he's got every fucking abbreviation possible, every title possible after his name. And then my character that I used to play, Sid Zimmerman, Gangrel, nowadays barkeep in that little section of town, and they operate a circulatory system where they provide drinks for vampires. Oops. Hunter of Hunters, and see no people, hear no evil. There we go. So yeah, we've got basically 100 or so NPCs in the game. Some of them in multiple copies because they appear in multiple copies. multiple times at once. I'm not going to go through all of them, but the game has enough tokens to rival Fantasy Flight in number of token and pieces of cardboard. So we got status tokens, we've got difficult terrain, we've got these here are like the zones you can investigate in the game. The lightning bolts are what we call action tokens, which is like an area that when your character gets there, the game pauses, and then of course this is GM-less, but like if we were playing in a traditional role-playing game, this is where the GM would say, okay, wait, as you're moving there, you see XYZ, or like something happens. You thought you were sneaking along this corridor, and then you get to a point where, oh, the door opens. Like there's a door that opens in front of you, and now there's an NPC that comes out. So the game is going to ask you, when you get to that token, read like page 50. Page 50 will explain what's going on and then tell you to add the NPC. And then, well, you might have to sneak past them. Putting that back in. And showing last but not least the tiles. Keeping them for last. Yeah, everything should fit. Keeping them for last, the tiles are beautifully illustrated pieces of parts of Montreal. So this is a street in Montreal North. Our painter, so it's the same person that did all of the tiles for Vampire, so it's the same style across the entire game. But what he did basically was to take pictures of like snapshots of Montreal and basically paint, because those are all they're like, it's digital art plus painting over it. It's I've seen the process. It's very interesting. It's also very expensive if you want to commission that person, but they do an amazing work. So this is Montreal North, which is essentially where Dixon lives, or used to live. Lucky used to be. Then we have Erin's home during her introduction. I guess I should put them down like this. Yeah. This is an office in downtown Montreal. This is Harold's psych office. An alley. And there's like all of these maps are full of Easter eggs about either the city or the game or the World of Darkness. There's even, it's hard to see here, but even down to the newspaper, which is very hard to see, especially because my cam is all blurry. But he went and took a snapshot of an issue of the Montreal, the Journal de Montréal, on like in the year and more or less within the months that this game takes place in, and took the headlines and reproduced them on onto the tile. And so you have like, it's an actual issue that if you were living in Montreal in 2012, you would have, was it 2012? The game the game is in 2020, my bad. But in the year 2020, you would have seen that. The other side is Alex's pawn shop, the basically the back entrance for Kindred. Thank you, Eve of the Orphan. I've never seen maps and minis for World of Darkness before. Beautifully done. Yes, that was part of what we needed for this game to work, is that we wanted to have those maps, and we're looking into a way to because we want to share them, of course. We want like people to use them. World of Darkness is not necessarily a universe where you will use maps and minis, but it's still nice to kind of have like a visual representation of where everything is, if only. And here we have the crime scene I was talking about. This is Jade's introduction with humans that are like 15 feet 15 feet long on the tile. Kind of weird once you start putting your character, your mini on there, because, you know, if I take just the d6, like, the hexes are rather big. But, you know, artistic representation. So this is the crime scene that Gabe has caused and that Jade has to fix in the investigation tutorial. This is Yuma's territory. So that's where Dixon was a couple of days ago when we were playing. That's where he met with Yuma. This is, of course, to anyone who's familiar with Montreal. Those who are not will probably recognize it from like movies, but the Five Roses, which is a very popular landmark of Montreal. The Five Roses flour mill. So it's the second mission in the game, the second chapter. You get to go and investigate the inside of the mill. You're tracking down a ghoul. Oh, this is interesting. This, everyone, is where the Elysium in Montreal by Night on Mondays, the Elysium that happened in that sort of old church that had like a secret entrance and everything. This is the visual representation of what it looked like, minus the threatening, menacing, glowing circle at the bottom. But this is what it is. An older, it's kind of dark. That's the thing with Vampire, though. All of our tiles are very dark because it's always nighttime. But there's like a second story. Can I see it a bit more? Not really, but there's like a balcony that surrounds it with like a mezzanine. It is not a thaumaturgical portal, but it is a blood sorcery ritual. Then the other one is just sewers, because we love playing in the sewers. We've got a squalid apartment in one of the less well-off districts of Montreal. An artist's rendition of the airport. Believe you me, the airport doesn't look like that, but it's an artist rendition. And this was it my first? No, this was my second scenario that I wrote after I was hired, because the first one that I did takes place in part of the sewers. I'll see the tile later, but the first one I did ever was the fight against the werewolf. Because yes, there's a boss fight against the werewolf. So we were talking earlier about like the fact that we needed to get permission from certain places and organizations that we wanted to feature in the game, and one of which who did not give their approval was the Musée des Beaux-Arts, the Fine Arts Museum. So in the game, at some point, you have to heist a museum. And what happened is one of the tiles, so this one here, was commissioned first. This is an accurate view of the street that runs by the Fine Arts Museum. This would be, this here is like the old museum building. This is like the new addition that they have. But because they didn't give us permission to do the inside, what we had to do is we turned to McGill. Like I said, the McGill University gave us access to everything. And McGill has a museum that, in my 37 years of existence, have not visited ever. But this is a representation of the main room. I didn't know, but we do have the bones of a T-Rex in Montreal. Or it's a dinosaur similar to a T-Rex. I can't remember the name, but it's along those lines. And a giant-ass turtle. And this is an exact replica, like a bird's eye view of that room in the museum, which is, again, amazing. This is we use it as like a police station from time to time. If you've committed Masquerade breaches, you're probably going to see this tile a bit more often than others. And also for the in-universe security company called North Shield. This is just a condo, a loft in Montreal. The type of apartments that you would see often in the more like well-off neighborhoods. It's not all of it, of course, because like the front door is here, and then you have like bedroom, you have bathroom, you have an office, you have like a part here, and it's missing sort of another part to complete it. Well, this is a private auction. And this was my, so before I was hired, there's like a sort of an audition, if you will. So we had to write like a shortened version of a scenario, and this was the one that I had that was given to me. So it's an illegal auction of stolen artifacts, which, you know, it's in Hudson Bay blanket. Yes, Verivore, this is exactly it. Yes, this is exactly the pattern and the blanket itself. It is a Hudson Bay, and I think even like some of the other stuff is all things that you can find in like a Montreal stores that exist. But yeah, so stolen artifacts, which is something that Flory would be very interested in, and that's the werewolf lair. Not going to spoil anything for Montreal by Night, but there were signs. There were signs in the game that there's something in the sewers, and this was my first scenario. Then we have the one that Prax wrote. This is the tomb that Prax wants you to raid and figure out what's going on inside to find something very important to the Montreal Kindred. And this is the artist rendition, I should say, of the cemetery atop Mount Royal, atop the mountain, with the like some of the paths that you can just walk, and the actual Belvedere at the top of the mountain. So if you walk up to here and you place yourself somewhere along here, I don't remember which one it is. I think it's like over here. You can see all the way up to my house on a clear day. But this is a Belvedere at the top of the mountain. That also we have from time to time. We have shows and such. So this is why in the game anyway there is a show happening while this is happening. This is the bar that Flory went to. This is the bar where Alex and Sid, so Zimmer and Erickson, work at outside of Quebec City. Very cool dive bar. Very not shady, but very dirty bar. And this is again a street. This is on top of the plateau, so closer to where I work. And again, like the signs of the places, of the stores, the newspapers and all that, they were all taken from places that actually exist. So for those of us who live here or who've visited, will recognize. There's a presbytery, fancy restaurant. This is where Nico and her sire used to live. An artist's loft, basically, a commune almost. With a piece of what you can find deep under Montreal. There's quite a few like that, but I'm not gonna talk more about it to not spoil. This is related to the thing that I talked about earlier with spoilers. This is the interior of Vampire Hunter, the Inquisition's HQ in Montreal. This is for one of our side quests. It takes place on the North Shore in Oka, deep in werewolf territory. The werewolves that Flory more or less encountered during her interlude come from here. Just a regular old office building. The Princess Tower, seen from above. It's kind of a weird perspective, right? This is a very cyberpunk inspired moment in the game for those of you who have played Cyberpunk 2077. Yeah, a job goes wrong, and kind of like in Cyberpunk, you have to jump out the window. Except, well, you don't want to fall off and die because it's basically a straight drop. So you need to find purchase somewhere. the disused subway station. This is part of the stores that are in the underground city. Not vampire related. This is a vampire's lair that y'all have yet to see, including this one and the last piece, which is the last map of the entire game, the Shrine to Cain, underneath the Temple of Eternal Whispers. For those of you who have played older editions of Vampire and who might remember the Sabbat years in town, the place still exists in chapters and is still in use. Put that back in. Put that back here. Come on. Come on, fit. And we're gonna close the big boy. And I'm just going to bring it over because I don't want it to stay on my desk. I keep swearing to myself that this is the last time I'm ever going to carry those boxes, and it never seemed to be. So if you're interested, very quickly, because she featured in the game, just want to show you, again, one of the expansions for those of you who weren't there. But this is the Banu Hakim expansion. They're all the same, all 4 expansions: Ministry, Banu, La Sombra, and Hekata. And they contain... So whereas the main characters all have like their introduction as like this one like tutorial, the expansion characters have 2. So you get to play through 2 chapters, and each box comes with the same package of like stat sheets for monsters, disciplines and items you can find that are unique to this character, the unique NPCs, your character sheet. And in this case, the reason I took the Banu out is because the Banu Hakim's expansion is all about finding someone who angered our good friend the Sheriff Caleb, and who fled Montreal with sensitive information. It needs to be found, and it's none other than our good friend. Oh, it says passenger number 6. Nina Barker. It's Nina, everyone. She's not called Nina in here because we didn't want anyone to... I basically just spoil it. But yeah, there she is. Nina Barker. So, played during Dixon's Interludes by Animation Art. So she's the NPC that is in there. And of course, that means that Aaron Whistle, the Banu Hakim, is an NPC that is in Montreal by night. You have tangentially heard of him during Pope's Interlude. The only one that isn't in Montreal yet is Melissa, the Ministry. Her entire backstory takes place in South America, and she's... We talked about South America a bit during one of the memoriams for Dixon, but she wasn't there yet. She starts off actually her one of her 2 scenario is actually back when she was human. There's a few characters whose backstories are shown back when they were human mortals and not yet embraced. Whoa. Fix this. Okay. Verivor said, in the chapters box there were 4 empty slots for characters minis. Those are for the expansion packs. In fact, there's enough room in the entire box. Also, when I showed the booklets, there's enough room to slide in the 8 booklets for the expansion pack characters, and all of these slots for cards are also big enough to include everything from the expansions. So unless you want to keep the box for a sentimental reason or whatever, once you've bought an expansion, you can just dump everything else in the main box and throw that box to the trash. or keep it as a collector. That's what I'm doing with mine, all 4 of them. But that was the unboxing of Vampire Chapters. It's 3 years of work, 3 years of blood, sweat, and tears, is mostly blood. Working, writing, and breathing vampires, and in some cases breeding vampires as well, for me and the rest of the team. So if you're interested, check it out. It's available. It is an expensive game though, and I kind of know the reality that we are living in currently, but it is worth it, especially if you have, like, if you want to get, or you have a group that like is kind of interested but they don't really want to play vampire because they're not sure. I had members of my own group who, like, they know about vampire. We've tried to play a few times. We've played other World of Darkness games, but they weren't quite sure like what a vampire game should be like, and so playing through this kind of showed them what it was. And the fun thing is it's completely GM-less. So you can take a break if you're like the forever GM or forever storyteller, and just have fun with the rest of your gang. You can solo it. You can solo it with NPC. You can try the freaking challenge of playing with just the one character the whole time. It is very difficult. It's, in fact, you're not going to be able to get everything the way you want it. If you play pure solo, you're gonna have to live with a lot of failed checks and all that, because the game was made and balanced to be played with at least the minimum is one like full player character and one NPC that follows you around, kind of like in Disco Elysium. So it starts from there and then it goes all the way up to a group of 4. Orphan says, yeah, I could see with the hex tiles and minis how it would be a good intro for those who are more used to, say, D&D or similar to TRPGs. Yep, that was kind of the point, was to bridge the gap. We call it internally at work, we call this game an RPG in a box. That's the sort of thing that we're like specializing in. It's a GM-less version and a sort of streamlined version that still retains a bit of the board game experience, but that bridges the gap between board game and TTRPG with narrative-driven adventure. I didn't get all the booklets out, but to give you an idea how we've worked this narrative in, there are choices that you make almost at the start of the game, I would say within the first like 5-ish chapters, that have an impact 30 chapters later. Like, there are things that you're gonna keep with you until way later in the game, not really knowing what they do. Like, it's an effect card that has some strange, like, vague sounding name, but that eventually you'll get the you'll get like the payoff later on. And so it's hard sometimes to know if you've done something that will be beneficial to your character or will play against them later on. There are cursed items in the games. There are things that you should probably not touch, but they can also give you power. Like, there's also that aspect. There are ways to commit diablerie if you're into that. There are ways to drop your humanity to very, very low if you want to play a low humanity vampire. And the thing is, low humanity will open doors that high humanity won't. Sometimes in the games, you'll have, like, in a booklet, like a prompt that says, if your humanity is 4 or lower, well, here's something you can do. But if it's not, you can't. You have to act in a more humane way. I think I missed it, but for the example, if you played with a group of 4, would there be someone that would be storyteller? Nope. So I'll just open up the ministry again to just show you the the booklets. Imagine you read them like you would a solo TTRPG or a choose your own adventure book. So here's the first one to make sure we don't spoil, right? Called Captive. And so the storybook would tell you which page to begin on, because they're not in order, you know, to avoid. This is, of course, because this is an expansion, it plays literally solo. Like, it's just one character, there's no one else. But these chapters last, they're not as long as like the full-fledged chapters in the game. But like, for instance, it starts with the following prompt. Father de Soto stops at your cage. Because, yeah, Melissa, just to give you a bit of a background thing, she's an investigative journalist. She's investigating a drug cartel, and her now ex-boyfriend basically sells her out to the cartel for a shit ton of money, because they want to, you know, they want to get rid of her, and she gets betrayed by the boyfriend, and so they take her prisoner and bring her to like a remote sort of location in the jungle. And they have a weird priest with them, Father de Soto. And he says, I'm going to be leaving camp a while to deliver your boyfriend his payment. Keep the guards and chief entertained, Oh, and enjoy your new companion. His mama will be heading here soon to free him, and you'll want to be long gone when that happens. He wanders off down the trail and out of sight. You hear the camp chief shout from his tent. Joey, get a mechanic from the village. Priest or no priest, Don Ignacio wants us moving on tonight, and the prisoners ain't coming with us. Someone fetch him a shovel so they can get some graves dug. And then you have like a little setup of a patrol route. And then it says, you know, if you're ever in the guard's line of sight and you are not, like you fail your stealth check, then you read another page, which is this one. And then as you read, you'll get a choice, like, you can try to make a stealth check to hide last minute, or if you have the item card old clothes, so you found some like discarded uniforms in the camp, you can disguise yourself as a guard. And so these are all, it's almost set up a mix-up between TTRPG. Yes, yep, that's the RPG in a box. That's essentially what we call it. So Verivore, if you play with 4 players in the normal chapters, you can just like pass the booklet along as you play. It could be like every player reads 1 page, or one thing that in my case with my home group, I acted as storyteller because, you know, having written the freaking game, I know everything. I remember all of the little secrets, all of the exploits you can do and all of that, so it wouldn't be fair if I were playing. But like, I've seen other groups, what they've done is when their character was speaking or interacting with an NPC, they would read the thing out loud, or someone else would read them so that the player doesn't know what the choices are and would have to choose, and all of that. So it's you can have one person take care of everything and then have like 4 players playing. You can have, you know, pass the book along, whatever you want it to be. I've ran the game with more than 4 players. It is possible. There's a set of house rules that I've published. I think they're on the like unofficial, there's like a fan Discord for chapters that is in no way associated with Flyos, but I did give them my house rules for playing with 5 players or more. There's a way to play the game. It's going to obviously be a lot easier if you play with a bigger group, but you know, sometimes your home group is, there's 6 players, like 6 people total. So while one can be the GM for chapters, like you still have 5 players. There's not enough cards in the game to make it work like rules as written. But there's a way. I've adapted it when I was showcasing the game at Gen Con. I can see where having a set ST can help with doing it on live stream as well. It would be hard to play chapters on stream because you would need Well, I mean, so let's say you're playing offline, like not stream, but as like, you know, on Zoom or whatever with friends remotely. You could have like a camera that's set up on like on the board, and then the storyteller doing stuff. But like the moment combat starts, your players have like what we call combat decks with all the moves that they have. So depending on your skills in like weapons and brawl or in melee, you get different like combat moves that you can make. And there's like an extra layer of strategy in the game where you're gonna have to choose which card you want to play. You can't play your entire deck, so you have to carefully choose how you want to approach the fight going in. And without those cards, it's a lot harder. Like, I guess players can take notes and like note down all of their things. But even streaming it, which is why it's kind of the reason why what we're doing on Mondays with Montreal by Night is like a prequel to this. I didn't want to play the campaign of chapters, also not to spoil anything. But I know the city by heart. I know those NPCs like the back of my hand. Back of my hand. Anyway, I know them inside and out. And I know how they would react to all the situations and everything. So it was easier to just have, you know, let's place the game in the same city with the same cast, but we're gonna do a full-on RPG, and you know, things are gonna go from there. Of course, if you get the game with a bit of finagling, you can probably make a version on Tabletop Simulator. We did have a demo on Tabletop Simulator, but it's like an older version of the game, and not necessarily the I'm not gonna say the most balanced, but it was pre a lot of playtesting, pre a lot of rewrites, so you can play it at least a couple of chapters, but it's I don't suggest it because it's not what the game is now. Yeah, basically, my streams on Monday are after Montreal by Night and before chapters. So technically, Montreal by Night ends in 2000 because everything old Vampire the Masquerade ended in 2000 with the Gehenna, and then you would switch to 5th edition, where, you know, some of the things have changed and all that. And the stream on Monday is essentially 8 years before chapters. Or 6 years, I don't remember. If my players are in chat, they can let us know. And it has the same like cast, but of course, a lot of events have changed. A lot of things have like pawns have been moved, and some new NPCs were introduced, like Santiago, the ministry who was just recently discovered, is something that we couldn't include in chapters. For lack of space mostly. And so I was like, well, that's sort of an idea that I had pitched during the game. It didn't make it to the cutting room, or it made it to the cutting room floor. Anyway, it was cut out for various reasons. And I'm like, well, it's not like I'm limited in the stream, so might as well add them in. And that's why a lot of the a lot of the main characters of chapters haven't been seen, except for Luciana and Sam now in the stream, because they weren't in Montreal at the time. They arrive later. Yeah, Eve, one of the things that like my bosses gave me the green light for that stream, and they're like, yeah, sure, go ahead. And even if you visit our legend keeper for the game, like a lot of the illustrations are the actual official artwork. Which reminds me, I did promise that I would shout out the people that have worked on this game, and my rulebook is now all the way over there, so I'm just gonna grab grab the PDF here. So the illustrations that we had were done by Mark Simonetti, who did the front, Kim Van Doon, who did a lot of the inside art, the images, the NPCs, Sergey Vasnev. I apologize if I mispronounce the names, but Sergey is the painter who did all of those maps. That's his work. Dominic Mayer, Ruslan Igorovich, Erling Severson, Kim Ermelis Emka, Krzysztof Bienlawski, Carla Gomez are I think Carla was she one of our interns? Anyway, a lot of them, and then our 3D artists were Baptiste, who's the one who modeled basically all the minis, and in fact he's our main modeler for Werewolf. His work is phenomenal. Francesco Oru did a lot of them. David Arberas and Stéphane Simon. Then we have, of course, for the writers, there's me. There's the other writer that we have at work, full-time narrative designer Thomas Fortier. And then in the freelancers, Prax, who was in chat earlier. And then Matthew Dawkins, who you've probably heard the name in regards to Vampire. We've invited him to write a few scenarios. He's the one that did the Ministry. And then Fabian Fernandez, Maude Mitchell, Mike Nudd, Brooklyn Lundberg, they all did. So that was before I got hired, but they did some of the introductions. So one of them did the Gangrel. One of them did Philippe Antoine, who worked for Ubisoft, did Chapter 1. And then another one did Chapter 2. And what's the other one? One of them did the original Malkavian, but I had to rewrite it completely. But they did, like, I kept the ideas and everything, but anyway, it's a thing when you work with freelancers anyway. And Angela, who did Chapters 3, 4, and half of the feeding events were hers. So yeah, I'm not gonna go through the list. There's an entire list of people who have worked on it. A lot of translators, and QAs, devs, everything. It was a labor of love, but also blood, sweat, and tears. Oh yeah, I forgot we credit our frogs. We used to have one frog per, because our logo was a little hopping frog. We still have African frogs at the office, one per employee, and unfortunately, one of them, Didier, died in the process of making the game. So, RIP Didier. Oh, also, that's true. Our art director, Marie-Michelle, that I work with, and the graphic designs of the books and the cards and all that were done by Claudia, who no longer works with us. But yeah, she did a lot of like how the cards are made. Mary also did a lot of them too. I can't know exactly who did what because it's just at some point everything gets crisscrossed and we touch on a lot of things. Yeah. Didier died, but was replaced by a frog that we have named Nosfrogatu, because it is a very strange frog that has like doubled in size, which should not have happened. But yeah, they're cute. They're cute. I don't have any pics of them, I think, but yep, it's our little thing. And yeah. So that is Vampire the Masquerade chapters. No, they're not a toad. They're an actual African frogs. African frog. They it's like those little like pink frogs or something. What's the actual name for it? African dwarf frog is what we have. African dwarf frogs. You can just copy paste the Wikipedia link. There we go. So every time we have a new employee, we get one. And they're cute and very chill. They're very chill frogs. And yeah, so that's it. It's already 11:15 for me, so I'm gonna get going. But I hope you enjoyed this unboxing. I'm gonna put it up on YouTube so that people can see it. And yeah, if you're interested, check it out. It's already available in FLGSs everywhere, or you can probably order it from a gaming store online. This entire stream, by the way, was not sponsored in any way. This is my comp copy that I've busted my ass to write and work on for years. So I'm just like excited to I can finally share and show you what it is. And then maybe in a couple of months, in a few months, I might be able to show you Werewolf. So have a good night, everyone. I'll see you all on Monday for more Vampire. We're back on the 21st of October, so in 3 Saturdays for Scion. Otherwise, it's going to be Mondays for the month of October. And I've talked about it with my players on Monday, so I'm going to make the announcement now. We are going to take a break from Vampire for the month of November, because Monday nights in November are going to be, the 4 Mondays in November will be dedicated to a public playtest of a horror game that I've been working on for the past 2 years called One Frightful Night. And I can't wait to show you what it is. So we're going to have a little like Stranger Things scheduling event, if you will, happening where we're gonna have most of our season of Vampire take place and then take a 1 month break and then have the like 2-part finale after that. So that's going to happen later in a few years, well, in like a month basically. But yeah, that's the next project that we're on, and of course we're going to be back for Montreal by Night until our story is over. Thank you everyone for coming, and have yourselves a good night. Bye-bye.